This is Bean to Barstool, a podcast that looks at the intersections of craft chocolate, craft beer, and other artisan drinks. My name is David Nilsson. I'm a professional drinks writer, an advanced cicerone, the author of Pairing Beer and Chocolate, and the creator and host of this show. The music for this episode is by my dear friend, indie folk musician Anna P.S. You can find out more about Anna's music in the show notes or on annapsmusic.com. You can find links and information about our guests in the show notes as well. I hope you enjoy this episode of Bean to Barstool. Hey everyone, Happy New Year. Welcome to the first episode of Bean to Barstool for 2026. Thank you all so much. For those of you who are new to the show, for those of you who have been listening for 5.5 years now, I'm so glad that you all spend this time with me. I'm excited for what is ahead in the coming year. I always spend the last week or two of any year, kind of that no man's land between Christmas and New Year, maybe a few extra days on either side, just doing like reflecting and planning and brainstorming and intention setting and all that kind of fun stuff. And been doing that these last few weeks and have kind of reinvigorated some of my excitement around this podcast, around my writing, around some of the other projects that I work on, and I'm looking forward to what we've got coming up in the coming months. Hope you all had a good New Year and a good holiday season. New Year's Eve, we stayed in. Actually, we took a long walk in the snow, which was really nice, and then we came back, opened some really good bottles of beer. Triple Van de Gar, Bourgogne de Flanders, Bon Mariage Parfait 50th anniversary, just some really good Belgian stuff. That tends to be what we celebrate with. And we're looking at maybe trying to get back to Belgium in 2026. It's been a few years. So had a good time New Year's Eve and a really relaxing holiday season. What I want to do for today's show, we don't have a guest today. It's just going to be me. And we're going to talk about things that I think the craft chocolate world can and should learn from the world of craft beer. I have been involved with craft beer for a little longer than I have with craft chocolate, and the craft beer industry is older by a couple decades than craft chocolate. And I think there are a lot of things that craft chocolate as an industry and as individual businesses can learn from beer. Now, that doesn't mean that the industry needs to look up to its older brother and like learn these pearls of wisdom. Most of these honestly are mistakes and missteps that I have seen on the beer side that I would love to see craft chocolate makers and the craft chocolate industry avoid before making the same mistakes, or maybe correct some of those mistakes before they get too far along. Some of these are at the industry level. Some of them are at the business level. Some of them, I'm going to be honest, are sort of reality check downers just a little bit, but these are all in the spirit of optimism and of building the best industry and the best businesses that we can. These are just things that I've observed. I don't have perfect advice or solutions on all of them. I am not in some position of authority to be dispensing that anyway, but as somebody who works pretty consistently in both industries, you all know already from listening to the podcast and hopefully reading the blog and following me on social media that I really enjoy kind of drawing parallels between these two, whether it's at the product level or the creative level, or in this case, as we're going to talk about today, at the business and industry level. So these are just things that I've observed. This is just my perspective, and I would welcome any dialogue or other thoughts or questions or anything like that that you might have. So let's go ahead and jump right in on these. Very first thing is that I think craft chocolate needs to develop a code of conduct for its events and for general industry involvement. One of the mistakes that craft beer believed about itself early on was that the fun and adventurous nature of the early craft brewing movement served as an inherent barrier against bad behavior and bad actors. There's this well-known quote in craft beer that for a long time was waved as a sort of flag of identity for the industry, but now is a pretty cringe testament to the power of self delusion. There's a well known brewer. Those of you in the craft beer industry will know who this is, who seems to be a good guy, and I have enjoyed interviewing and has done a whole lot of great stuff for craft beer. But he had this quote maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. I do not remember exactly when he said it, that craft beer was 99% asshole free. And he was saying it as this statement of like, everybody in craft beer just seems to be great folks. We all get along. We all support each other. You don't get the kind of bad behavior that you get in these other industries. And for a long time, craft beer believed that about itself. This is a very human, like easy human mistake to make, that people who like the things that we like must be good people because we're good people and we like those things. In reality, people who work in craft beer and like craft beer are just like people anywhere else. They're complicated, and sometimes they do good things, and sometimes they do bad things, and some of them do mostly good things, and some of them do mostly bad things. And just because we share an interest doesn't mean that we don't need mechanisms in place for protecting people and for checking the behavior of bad actors. Like many entrepreneurial fields, craft beer was almost exclusively white and primarily male early on. And while diversity has always been present, craft beer to this day is still working to overcome its homogenous image and reality. And women and minorities involved in craft beer have always been aware of the inequalities and barriers and prejudices present in the industry and some of the abuses that can take place because of that. In 2021, a brewer by the name of Brienne Allen posted a call for responses on her Instagram account, asking for women and other folks in the industry to share their stories of harassment, assault, discrimination, and I think she probably expected to get, a handful of responses, was overwhelmed by literally thousands and thousands of people sharing, primarily, again, women and folks in marginalized communities sharing their stories of bad behavior, of being on the wrong end of this kind of behavior in craft beer. And along with that, most of the time, the inaction of breweries or of industry organizations when they were made aware of these acts. And it really sent ripples throughout the entire craft beer world. It was kind of craft beer's Me Too moment. Some things came about from that. I mean, there were some bad actors who lost their jobs because of that. There were a lot of industry events put into effect anonymous reporting mechanisms for anything that happens at festivals or conferences and things like that. Did this clean up the industry and prevent harassment and assault and discrimination from ever happening again? Of course not. This is still a major problem, but, it took a few steps maybe in the right direction. What it did, probably more than anything else, was made a lot of folks in the industry, again, primarily white men, realize how pervasive this problem was and that they couldn't go on believing that craft beer is 99% asshole free when you're hearing thousands and thousands of stories of asshole-ish behavior. So this was an important moment in craft beer, and while there is still a ton of work to be done, it did lead to some positive steps. Like I said, we've got these anonymous reporting platforms for industry events. There are behavior and harassment policies that you're often required to agree to before attending different events. Craft chocolate needs to create its own policies and practices around this now, not because, and this could be me being naive and being protected by my own privilege, but not because there are rampant stories of this kind of behavior at craft chocolate events or other craft chocolate spaces, but because the best policies are created proactively and not reactively. And we want to be ahead of this kind of thing coming up in our industry. Now, one difference between craft chocolate and craft beer is that on the beer side, obviously, you have the presence of alcohol, which can drop inhibitions, but alcohol doesn't turn good people into bad people. It merely provides more opportunity for bad people to follow their worst impulses and prey on others. That means that just as craft beer is a cross section of society, and like I said, you have good and bad people and a lot of complicated people in the middle, craft chocolate is going to be exactly the same, even if you feel right now like it's 99% asshole free. And I know most of you know that it isn't. So we need these policies in place. This needs to include sexual harassment and assault. It needs to include discrimination. It needs to probably be expansive and include bad faith business practices. I'm not going to be the one to write these policies, but we need to have them in place, and we need to have mechanisms for accountability in place to go along with those policies. The fact that someone shares your interests doesn't mean that they share your principles. And the fact that they have good taste doesn't mean that they have good intentions. We need to remember that. This is still a small industry right now, and it is easy to think that we are all friends and that we all have each other's best interests at heart. But we can't be naive, and we need to have policies in place to make sure that we protect everyone in the industry, everyone who interacts with the industry. Number two, craft chocolate needs to be proactive in promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mentioned with craft beer that this is and always has been a problem, and I would say that on the maker and consumer end of craft chocolate, that is still the case for us. Not to say, obviously, that there isn't diversity, but that we always need to be working toward more. One difference between beer and chocolate, obviously, is that with the supply chain for cacao, yes, we have lots of people of color involved at the growing end of this supply chain on farms around the world. But especially here in North America, for makers and consumers, there is a massive geographical division between where that cacao comes from and where it is being used, and the nature of that extraction, even if we are committed to paying good prices and good relationships and taking care of the land and all of that, still mirrors a lot of the same kind of inequalities that we that are built into so many other industries, which means we need to work even harder to overcome those. It is not enough, both from an employment standpoint and a consumer standpoint, it is not enough to just say everyone is welcome, even if you mean it. Craft beer has always said that everyone is welcome, but it is not enough to just hang an all are welcome sign on the door. You have to be proactive about building in diversity and equity and inclusion into the industry. That is especially true right now when bigots and abusers of every shape are feeling very empowered in the current environment. You have to take proactive steps. That includes proactively seeking out diverse voices in your feeds. It extends to your hiring practices, to who you are bringing in for consulting, who you are partnering with for events, who you are collaborating with. It includes mentorship programs so that diversity does not just stay at the hospitality and production level, but extends into leadership and ownership. And more than anything, you shouldn't be taking this advice just from me or people who look like me. You need to be listening to diverse voices and making sure those diverse voices have microphones at the industry level to be able to make sure that we are building the industry that we want, that fully reflects the kind of world we want to live in, that is diverse and equitable and inclusive. Number three, labor practices. Your employees are not your family. By now, we all know that if you walk into a workplace and your manager or the owner says, "We're more like a family here," you need to run screaming, because that means that they're going to take advantage of you. And even if you are the manager or owner and you don't intend to do that, if you don't have policies and practices in place that take care of your employees, it is very easy to build an environment that unintentionally takes advantage of them. Craft beer started out and to this day at many levels still continues because of do-it-yourself entrepreneurs following a dream. And when you are a do it yourself entrepreneur following a dream, you work insane hours under often unsafe conditions. And as the industry has grown, that sort of for the love of the game attitude has continued to extend to new hires. And if you're on the production side of brewing, this is an industrial job. And if you're on the consumer side, it's a hospitality job. And for different reasons, those are two of the more difficult types of work you can do. And while the details are obviously different, the same thing can be true in craft chocolate. It might not feel as fast paced, but the need to take care of yourself and your employees and figure out how you're going to continue to do that as your business grows and as the industry grows is incredibly important. Sustainable business models need to take into account responsible labor practices from the very beginning. Even if you have a very small company and you have 2 employees, you need to figure out how you're going to be able to help those employees keep up with their own cost of living as your costs increase. You need to figure out how you're going to make sure they're able to keep their jobs when things get difficult on the business side. And if you have a bigger company or you're planning for your craft chocolate company to grow, you need to figure out how you're going to be a responsible employer. How are you going to look at things like health insurance or employee retirement? How are you going to guarantee safety? How are you going to interact with organized labor if your employees decided to organize? What are the options for potential employee ownership, which we've seen some breweries pursue? All of these are things you need to think about now. Number 4, acquisitions. The craft chocolate industry needs to have conversations now around how it is going to respond to large companies, especially big chocolate and candy companies, purchasing craft chocolate companies. For right now, the biggest example I can think of goes back decades to Scharfenberger being purchased. There have been some smaller ones, but we really have not reckoned with this in the way that craft beer had to about 20 years ago when the big beer companies started buying up craft breweries. Because of downturns in the industry, most of those big companies have divested themselves of a lot of those craft brands, but this was an identity crisis for a lot of breweries, for the industry itself. Craft beer was born as a rebellion against mass-produced beer, and it got some things wrong because it was defining itself by that, but it also got some things wrong, I think, when it got in bed with big beer. On the craft chocolate side, there is even more at stake, I would argue, than there was on the beer side because we have human rights concerns and ecological concerns when it comes to the sourcing of ingredients that craft beer does not. So I think there's even more at stake if we are looking at the prospect of big chocolate companies purchasing craft brands. If you take a stance against this, and I think you should, then you are going to be shamed by folks who are being paid by big chocolate or want to be paid by big chocolate into feeling naive for criticizing these acquisitions. Big chocolate companies do not have craft chocolate's photo taped up in their lockers, okay? If it's taped anywhere, it's on a dartboard, but when they come, they are going to come bearing gifts. All right, you look at the recent advertising campaign by Cadbury, where they were, making fun of snobs who like craft chocolate. I wrote an article about that for the Bean to Barstool blog because we saw the exact same thing in craft beer about a decade ago. It shows that they are noticing craft chocolate. They're not wasting money on advertising, trying to smear craft chocolate if you aren't having an impact on them in some way, which means pretty soon they are going to notice with their checkbooks out. Are there good people working for bad companies? Of course there are. One of the issues with systemic problems is that the individuals in those systems don't have to have bad intentions in order to perpetuate harm, because the systems are self-perpetuating and require active deviation in order to be changed. So yeah, there's good people who work for big chocolate companies. Some of them are probably your friends, and that's great. talk to them. But don't be deceived into thinking that those companies themselves have good intentions if they come calling. There are lots of reasons that major corporations purchase small craft producers outside of craft chocolate, looking at craft beer and elsewhere. And almost none of them are about a change of heart from their basic business practices. It's about sowing consumer confusion. It's about greenwashing. It's about being able to undersell the market, because the one thing a big company can afford to do that craft chocolate or a craft company of any kind can't is lose money. Have these conversations now. The industry needs to figure out what its response to this kind of activity is going to be.
We'll be right back.
Are you passionate about beer, dreaming of crafting the perfect brew? Cincinnati State's Brewing Science program is here to make that dream a reality. Imagine learning from some of the best in the world. Their faculty are seasoned pros with years of experience in the beer industry. You'll get hands-on training in their in-campus brewing lab, turning classroom concepts into award-winning creations. Cincinnati State offers an associate degree and several specialized certificates to tailor your education to your career goals. Whether you're just starting out or looking to deepen your expertise, they've got you covered. And they know life is busy. That's why their in-person classes are held in the evenings, perfect for those with full-time day jobs. And with some of their courses offered entirely online, you can brew up your future without being on campus every day. When you finish the program, their strong connections with local breweries mean you'll be set up for success in the job market. Make a choice for your future today. Visit cincinnatисtate.edu/brewing for more information. And then number 5, and in some ways this is sort of a summary of the first 4 points I've made, but as a industry and as businesses, be prepared for success. Dress for the job you want. This is not you and your friends just screwing around. You are running a business and together building an industry. And this can't just stay a bunch of friends who are having fun. By all means, stay friends and have fun. But we need to build the businesses and build the industry that we hope to have correctly from the ground up. So think about what that destination is. What do you want your business to eventually look at, even if you can't tell the path from here to there and it seems unrealistic to dream about it? Think about the industry that you eventually hope craft chocolate will be, whatever unimaginable market share you hope for, some future where every farmer gets paid what they should be for their cacao. Will we ever get there? Probably not. But think about what that future is and what it takes to build it now and begin putting things in place, policies and practices to be prepared for that success when it arrives, because otherwise there's no possibility that it will. In summary, for those 5 points, you cannot trust good vibes to keep things on track. It requires active intention. It requires policy and practice. It requires hard conversations and hard decisions. All right, let's look at maybe some little bit lighter things that I think craft chocolate can learn from craft beer. Number 6, collaborate expansively. Collaborate with beverage alcohol producers, collaborate with coffee roasters, collaborate with your local spice merchant, collaborate with art galleries and punk rock bands. This is one thing that craft beer has done really, really well. It has understood the value of collaboration, both with businesses in other fields, but also with each other. And this is something that I don't see craft chocolate doing. Craft chocolate makers collaborate with beverage alcohol a lot. That's one thing that I focus on a lot with Bean to Barstool. We see collaborations with breweries and distilleries, and that is awesome. They collaborate with craft coffee. So we get a lot of coffee chocolate bars that have the logo of whatever local coffee shop or coffee roaster you worked with for that. That's awesome. I know some of you collaborate with, like I mentioned, spice merchants or bakers or other kind of unconventional collaborators like that to be able to make unique one-off inclusion bars with them. That is awesome. What I don't see craft chocolate makers doing is collaborating with each other. This is something that is part of the core identity of craft beer, of breweries collaborating with each other, releasing a beer that has both breweries' names on it. There is actually an entire festival, a big annual festival out in Denver that is nothing but collaboration beers. All of them require two breweries to have worked together to create a beer. It is such a cool way to maintain relationships within the industry, but it has a lot of other benefits under the surface. It allows for creative infusion. You get to get perspectives from another producer who does things a different way. It allows for an exchange of knowledge. It's a fun perk and opportunity for staff. You get to expose your employees to new people and new ideas and a new fun project. But even just on a business side, there is a reciprocity of storytelling when both breweries get to talk about how this was made and share that in different ways. There is an overlap, but an extension of the potential consumer base, especially if it is a brewery that has maybe doesn't distribute much, and so they just have a very small footprint. When you get those breweries collaborating, now they're opening up their brand and their sales opportunities to a whole new group of consumers from that other brewery. Craft chocolate makers don't seem to do this at all, and the opportunity is right there. There are a lot of things that a collaboration can mean. It doesn't necessarily require that you and your staff travel across the country expensively to work with another company. It certainly can, but you can do this somewhat locally. You can just do a sharing of ideas, and bars get made at one of those places, and then both of you share the branding on it. You can do a collaboration of concept where you and the other maker each do your own riff on the exact same concept for an inclusion bar, and then you can share those as a double pack or just double up on the marketing but share them independently. This is such an easy way to expand exposure, to work with other folks in the industry, to build relationships, to build consumer awareness. It is easy and it is right there, and I almost never see it happening. Please, somebody out there who works at a craft chocolate company, do this. Reach out to me if you want to hear more about how breweries do this, because the options for it are limitless. But I would love to see more collaboration, more branded collaboration between craft chocolate makers. Number 7, we need to do a better job of explaining to consumers what awards do and do not mean. Craft beer loves its awards. There are several major national or international awards that are a huge deal, but then there are tons and tons of smaller local awards, some that are kind of growing and becoming a bigger deal. And they're a fun opportunity for brewers to celebrate, for brewery teams to be able to celebrate their achievements. It's fun to be able to tell your fans that you did that. And I think in some cases, it definitely helps breweries when they win awards to be able to market specific beers and get a little bit more awareness. A few months back on here, I think it was right after I got back from one of my international beer judging trips, probably Mexico. I talked about what beer awards do and do not mean. And I don't think this is something that the industry has always explained to consumers terribly well. And I think that's true in basically any artisan food or beverage industry that does awards. There's always going to be confusion about what those awards are indicating. I think in craft chocolate, this can be even a little bit more confusing because of the way that awards are given out. Typically at most competitions, rather than having a clear first, second, and third place, these are scored, and so different scoring tiers earn different medals. So if you're above this threshold, you get bronze, and this score threshold gets you silver, and so on. And I think that's actually a pretty interesting way to do it, because rather than saying like these are the only 3 chocolates that you should care about because they're the only 3 we're recognizing, it's saying all of these bars earned this level. But that does also extend the confusion a little bit and potentially dilutes the image of any individual award. Because if a maker says, hey, my Madagascar bar won silver, and then a consumer sees that like 6 other bars from other makers also won silver, well, what did that award mean? So we need to do a better job of explaining proactively what these awards do and do not mean, so that we have a clear understanding from our consumers. There's always going to be confusion, of course, but if we're going to leverage those awards for marketing purposes, and hopefully to be able to raise some consumer awareness and understanding, we just need to get ahead of that a little bit. Number 8, this is not your hobby. Even if it is not your sole source of income, it is still not just a cute hobby that you're doing on the side. You need to be running your craft chocolate company like a business. I'm stealing the title Not Your Hobby from my colleague Julie Rhodes, who runs a marketing and consulting company of the same name for craft brewers called Not Your Hobby Marketing. And you should definitely go check out her stuff. Go to her website. She has a podcast now. But the whole point around this is kind of calling out brewers who started out as home brewers. Most breweries started out because a home brewer graduated into professional brewing. There's a very clear talent pipeline there. And because a lot of brewers started out brewing as a hobby, it is easy to carry that kind of amateur way of doing things into the professional space, which means you're not thinking about branding, they're not thinking about marketing, about media relations, about how to set up a website that is actually consumer friendly. Just a lot of different things that end up being afterthoughts because the main point was this passion and this hobby that they started out with. And I think the same thing can be true on the chocolate side. At the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival back in November, I gave a very short talk to the chocolate makers there on the importance of having a media relations strategy. We talked about the fact that there is basically no correlation between the size of your company and the significance of the stories that you can be telling in the media marketplace. You need to be running your craft chocolate company as a business, even if it is a passion, even if this started out as your hobby. You need to be looking at it as an actual business so that you can help it grow. And that's going to extend to a lot of the things we talked about earlier about your labor practices and about policies and all sorts of different things like that. Number 9, craft chocolate makers need to band together. In North America, I would love to see a guild come together of craft chocolate makers that can figure out how to lobby together, how to promote the industry together. Craft beer has done this fairly well. The Brewers Association in North America is the main brewing guild, and it hasn't done everything perfectly, certainly, and at the scale that a lot of craft beer has gotten to on a business level. This has gotten kind of confusing what the guild's actual role is, but I think at this stage in the development of craft chocolate, a makers guild would be a great thing for North American craft chocolate makers. I also, just selfishly, but I would also say for the benefit of the craft chocolate industry, I think that there needs to be some support around independent craft chocolate media. Right now, there's the Chocolate Professor, and then there's a whole bunch of other food and beverage outlets that will occasionally take craft chocolate stories, but getting some support from the industry and from makers for independent craft chocolate media that can serve to support the industry and those makers in a mutually beneficial relationship, I think would be great. So we need to look at how to band together so that everybody is not just kind of duplicating resources and efforts, but can actually do that as an organized group. Finally, one more thing I'm going to share, and this is honestly for craft beer as much as it is for craft chocolate, and that is around the use of generative AI. It is my belief, and I am happy to say publicly, that I don't think there is any ethical use of large language model AI. I think it is fraudulently and illegally trained on the intellectual property of writers and artists and photographers and researchers. I think it is an ecological disaster. I think it exists to sow confusion and further consolidate informational and economic wealth in fewer and fewer hands. And if you are a chocolate maker or a chocolate event organizer or a chocolate influencer, and you are using generative AI for your graphics or your writing, your captions, your newsletters, anything like that, knock it off. Your cute little AI generated avatars are not cute and they are not harmless. If you are making graphics for your festivals or for your label art or for your social media using AI, you are stealing from artists and you are not paying artists. What are the things craft chocolate is built on? It is built on ecology. It is built on recognizing the importance of paying the people who provide the essential resources our product derives from. It is about economic sustainability. It's about the human stories that undergird these products. AI undermines every single one of those things. And using generative AI in the craft chocolate industry is, in my opinion, directly hypocritical. Stop using it. I would encourage you to make public stances against using it. Just like with acquisitions, like we talked about earlier, you're going to be called naive by people who desperately want to be taken more seriously than they should be. But make a stance against it. Don't use it. You will not find me using it. All right, let's step back from that, talk about some good things for a moment. Upcoming event that I saw that was pretty interesting. Picari Chocolate in Quito, Ecuador is hosting a chocolate cocktail workshop on January 14th. I wish I could be down there for that. If you are in Quito, definitely check that out. I'll be interested to hear what they come up with there. Also, a new chocolate bar I just saw that got my attention from Sueños Chocolate in Massachusetts, who uses Ecuadorian cacao. They just released a balsam fir and sugar snow bar. This is the copy that they used for that. They said, spring's first flush of local balsam fir needles are locally foraged in June and then cured in sugar. In December, this sugar is dusted onto our 75% dark chocolate to produce a bar with the subtle, woodsy aroma of brushing by a tree branch. I am a sucker for bars that are made with any kind of conifer, spruce, fir, pine, whatever it is. Will always have a soft spot in my heart for MAP's Starry Night bar. Rest in peace. This sounds awesome to me. So if anybody's had a chance to try it, let me know. I'm going to try to get my hands on a bar and I'll let you know what I think of it. Coming up on Bean to Barstool, going to be doing more bonus and bite-sized episodes in between my full-length episodes in 2026. I used to do that consistently, and I've gotten away from it a little bit recently as my schedule has gotten bogged down. But I'm going to put some things in place with my schedule to be able to make sure that I can do that regularly. The next full-length episode will come out in 2 weeks, and I'll be talking with Liang Wang of Kesho Chocolate. Really excited about that one. And a couple weeks after that, we will be hearing from the brewers at Wandering Monsters Brewing, who have made some award-winning bars using ethically sourced cacao. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I hope this all wasn't too much of a downer. I would love to hear back from you, your thoughts on anything that I shared today. Thanks for listening. Hope you're having a great start to the new year. Cheers.